Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of HazChat by Hazmat 101 Consultants. I'm your co-host, Bob Nano, with my cohort in crime, Mr. Derek Sharman. Derek, how are you today?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
Good. Seems like we just did this.
It does. It's deja vu all over
It
again.
is Groundhog's Day. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Um, so this is an interesting run that I got a phone call on. We're not going to mention the department. We're not going to mention it was at a hospital facility, but we won't mention the hospital facility. But it was an interesting call because it came in as a gas odor. Security had been smelling this gas odor for approximately 45 minutes. The society called 911. So that's kind of the setup for the call. Let me start off by saying we're not Monday morning quarterbacking or any other day of the week for that matter. But we were called on this. Some questions were asked, and we tried to help this agency as best we could. Which is what the number one rule is: if you don't know who to call, we call that the hazmat walk. That's when you get your cell phone, you walk away, and you call a friend. And that's what the community is all about. I know, especially as a new hazmat lieutenant, I called my mentor, Toby Belvalacqua, many a nights, especially at 3 a.m. And we've both often offered that to any of our students in any of our classes. So I'm not going to bail you out. Don't call me for that kind of help, but we definitely want to help other people. And if we don't know the answers, which not everybody does, contrary to what some people say, we definitely can get you guys in the right direction. That's what it's all about. So like I said, we're
Mhm.
going to just quickly review and uh, we'll see where it goes. How about that?
Oh, that can be dangerous, but all right, let's see.
Well, we're sober right now, so we're good. I think we're
Hmm.
good. I will be reading off some of the things from the incident report that was sent me just to make sure we have the accurate information that we're putting out the accurate stuff. Um, so forgive me if you see me reading something and it's not just off the top of my head. I mean, I'm a smart guy, but sometimes I still need to use these babies right here. Um, so
So
I'm
when
gonna
you're looking up, we'll just assume that you're making up those parts.
Yeah, that's great. Or I could
There we go.
I could, as a good friend of ours does, I can just do the fake freeze. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The fish was
it was
this
this
big.
big. Right, right, right. Yeah, we don't want to go there. Um all right. So let me go to the first picture. So as I stated before, I got a phone call and first a text message, and then I got a phone call about this fire department was on scene. And what you're looking here is the outside air return, uh, and then going into chiller system. So as I mentioned before, security at this hospital had smelled an odor of gas, and there was no gas located on scene in this area when this department got on scene. They had a multi gas meter. They looked around, but what they ended up finding out was there's a process that was going on earlier where it's called a descaler, where they descale the the framework, the interior parts of the HVAC system there, and to get rid of all the mildew, whatever. So now
All the
keep
mineral buildup. Yeah.
right, exactly. So also keep in mind this is a active hospital. It's a decent sized hospital, and so you whatever you're going to do, you want to minimize the impact to the hospital, the patients. Once I got on scene, uh, there there was a hint of this odor, but again, nothing consistent with natural gas or propane in the area. And they were entering in the loading dock area, still didn't find anything. They started doing their 360, trying to get closer to the chillers that were closest to the hospital. And when they entered in through one of the areas, they noticed they had CO levels greater than 300 parts per million. So that's something significant. Um, they were, as you can see in this picture, they had the proper PPE on. They had their multi-gas meter. Um, they backed out when they had those elevated readings. Met with their battalion chief and said, "Okay, we obviously have something, because this is not normal. So we need to make this a hazmat response." Um,
Okay, so question. We say that there was a gas odor, or they responded to an odor. Did anyone Was anyone able to describe what the odor, give any descriptors to, was it a sweet odor, was it a pungent odor, were there any other descriptors, or were they just going with a unknown odor where it's something we don't know what it is, can't really describe it?
it was
Is that where we are?
the way it was described in the report was a hint of a smell not consistent with propane or natural gas. So
Okay.
security says it's a gas odor, but when the crew got on scene, there was a hint of something not consistent with a gas call, a gas
Okay.
emergency.
And no reports of eye irritation, respiratory
No.
irritation, no other indicators. So right now we just have an unknown odor. There's something, can't really identify and pinpoint it to a certain type, but we're saying it doesn't have that typical mercaptan odorant smell. So we're kind of saying it's not that, probably not an obvious like chlorine smell or anything like that. Okay.
Right. Right.
All right.
So the crews entered with a multi-gas meter, PID, and a tick to investigate further. And their CO readings were in the range of 115 parts per million on the AB side of the chiller, which I don't have those descriptions. Um, but as they went around the chillers, they noticed the CO readings dropped down to 2040 parts per million. So they were able to use their meter when they're doing their 360, kind of to, all right, we're getting higher readings over here, and now they're starting to go down. So they were starting to kind of isolate, I guess, for lack of a better term, the general area where all this is coming from. Um, Once they did that, they were also told this chemical that they were using to descale the towers is called Chem Aqua. The UN number is 31. Now they have on here 31155.
I confirmed it. That is correct.
Okay. So we do have that number. It says sodium hypochlorite, 12.5%, and it was found in bulk in the chiller areas. Um, so Derek, you want to hit on the chemical, on the SDS stuff you found on it?
So I mean, just looking at the SDS real quick, I mean, it's just a water treatment chemical. Looks like the main component is distilled water, so it's primarily water. Sodium hydroxide, two phospho, two phosphonobutane carboxylic acid. Don't ask me to say that again. Um, Sodium toluene triazole, sodium polyacrylate, polymalic acid, some other acid salts, a sodium salt, and some residual monomers, which are a trade secret, no cast number supplied. Um, so looking at that, I mean, it's basically it's a descaling type solution. It's something to break down. It's got a collection of different acids, and it's got your sodium hydroxide in there. All these things that can affect to some extent your electrochemical sensors. Looking at some of the other information with it, um, it does react with metals to release hydrogen. So that could be one of the indicators that we'd have to take into consideration is if it's being used to descale the system, it is coming into contact with certain metals. Is that possibly a hydrogen concern that we have there that's being released? Maybe not enough that we see it on our combustible gas indicator, but enough that it could be skewing maybe our CO, our electrochemical sensors a little bit. Other than that, the big concern is health. It's got a 3 in health rating, a 1 in flammability, and from there, it's a solution. It's a cleaning descaling solution. So kind of the things that we'd expect. It's going to be going to have some corrosivity hazards with it, but obviously, if we don't eat, drink, or shove it in our eyeballs, we should be okay.
Right. I'm gonna go to the next picture, which is shows the one of the rooms that has a scissor lift that you see right in front of it by these two ladders. And the reason why I
Hmm.
bring that up is because in the report it talks about that there was two additional rooms, one contained water heaters, and then others in the boiler room which had the scissor lifts inside. So they had, besides the CO readings, they had hydrogen sulfide readings of 1.3% H2S. So some people would say, well, it could be coming from the batteries from the scissor lifts. Initially, that was kind of the suspect, but then they found out that those weren't even plugged in. Um, we all know there's cross sensitivity with our CO sensor and hydrogen sulfide sensor. So could that have been it? So let's back up for a second. So now we've got an odor of gas, according to the security company. The crews on scene have an odor that doesn't fall in line with that hypothesis. And now we've got H2S readings along with CO readings, and we're in the chiller room, and you have a scissor lift. So you've got a couple different things that could be putting you down different rabbit holes, depending which one you want to go down, quite honestly. Um, and then when they went in with some more instrumentation like Draeger tubes, their pH paper, which was wetted and non-wetted, they weren't really getting anything on any of those. So
Okay.
after, go ahead.
No, no, I'm following along. So they did. It seems like their due diligence on running all the possible tests. Like you said, we've got a lot of potential players, and we also have the potential that all of them are producing something. So we might have a synergistic effect also.
Right. So when they couldn't find anything that was producing the CO or the H2S, they decided to evacuate the area. They did some ventilation, which they noticed their CO readings and everything dropping, which you would suspect by doing ventilation. So that's good. When they closed it back up, readings started going up again. So they had this cat and mouse game going on for quite a while. Um, what they decided to do was to they climbed up on the panels to check around the area, 15-foot area. They used a ground ladder. Um, they again checked the immediate readings for CO, um, and which was alerting again. Um, and then they ended up coming to a room that had the boiler room area, which is where they suspect the CO was coming from. That's where it was coming from, was a door or hatch or something that was left open. Um, but still, when they were going through all this, they were still trying to isolate one thing at a time. They took the battery scissor lifts out. Okay, good call. Let's start eliminating, by process of elimination, what the problem is, when you're still going through all this. Um, After they'd done this for a little bit of a time, they kept monitoring the towers. The readings for CO were approximately 10 parts per million each. So they took the scissor lifts out, they ventilated, they went and checked the area again for where the boiler room was. They were still getting slight readings. They were waiting for some on-premise people to show up, and they couldn't come until the next morning. So what they basically did is they they isolated the area. They saw that their readings were at I don't want to say acceptable level. I don't like using that term, but at a level they felt comfortable in leaving. They posted what they need, like a fire watch, somebody to, with the multi-gas meter, I'm assuming, to hang out and just make sure the problem didn't get worse, because obviously they ventilated and that helped. I think they secured the boiler room area, which I'm sure that helped as well. And then they went out the next day to meet with the company and try to isolate it a little bit more. Um,
Okay, so there was a follow up.
there was a
That's
follow up
good.
the next day, yeah, and without having to shut down. And this is something to think about when you have these infrastructures like a hospital. like if you have a major gas line leak, let's say in the roadway, you don't want to just shut off the gas line feeder because you don't know where those distribution lines go to. Some could go to a hospital. Now you have problems there. So here you have a chiller system that, I mean, just think about the logistics of having to move patients and, all those things. So they decide to isolate it and keep I'll call it a hazmat watch instead of a fire watch,
Hmm.
to kind of, make sure that the problem's not going to get worse. But I'm sure they also had a backup plan like, okay, if this starts going sideways, we're going to implement this plan, which is, whatever, move patients XYZ here, whatever the case may be. So I'm sure they had an instant action plan of some sort for that. And then they did a follow up the next day, and which I think, if I'm not mistaken, they determined that it was two things. It was the boiler room door, and they were still getting CO readings from, apparently, they were doing some kind of work in, the way it was described to me is, one wall or one section wasn't mirrored up completely, which was allowing a little bit of CO to drift out. Um, so that is kind of what we're thinking. They're going to do a follow up action report, and what it did do is it got the crews to be a little bit more familiar with the area, which they were. I'll show another picture. This is the chiller itself, that they were looking at. And then the last picture is a diagram that shows where the readings were. So when you look at these X's, the red X's, that's where they had the highest readings, and you can see those were in the chiller rooms. The yellow reading was lower, and then the blue X is supposedly no reading. So this is what was sent to me. Um,
Okay.
so it gives us some idea, of their process of walking through and doing their air monitoring. Um, but again, getting back to the pre-plan, so they know the hospital. They've been there obviously multiple times, but now they've had that interaction with, um, on premise. They, from what I understand, they noticed some gaps in response, from maybe maintenance or whatever, or maybe the maintenance people weren't as attuned to certain things as they probably should be. And so now that they have all these issues, honestly, for what was kind of a minor type scenario, for lack of a better term, now they can plan for the bigger scenario, and they know who the players are, which I encourage everybody, don't just sit around and wait for the call to come in. Go start meeting these people, especially when you're dealing with hazardous materials. Get to these warehouses that have ammonia in huge amounts, or a chemical facility, or what have you. There's things that you'll find out. We had a plating, well, it still is a plating company in downtown Orlando that is, just a crazy nightmare. And quite honestly, a lot of people hadn't gone to it for years. And when we did inspection, we were like, whoa, there's a lot of things wrong here. So you should do these hazmat inspections, especially if they're in your first due area. It doesn't matter if you're a hazmat team or not. That first due unit needs to be doing an inspection. When you come across a hazmat inspection, I encourage you, and Derek and I used to tell the guys this all the time, in your first due area, that is not part of, in our case, Engine 101 and Hazmat 1, you're going to do an inspection, it has hazardous materials, call us, we'll come. Matter of fact, if you don't want to do it, we'll let you get the gist of it, and we'll do the more in-depth, you know, what kind of meters we need to bring, kind of that kind of thing. So, um,
It's especially for these target hazards like this, because I mean, obviously anything with a potential for chemical release or hazardous environments is a concern, and we consider them all target hazards. But when we're talking about healthcare facilities like this, we're talking about people that cannot be easily evacuated and isolated. A lot of
right.
times, these are going to be, we have to keep them defend in place, and if we had to go to an evacuation process, it's not just a, hey, we need people to leave. This is a long and logistically challenging process if we have to evacuate something like this. And that's why most of your healthcare facilities also have dedicated health and safety personnel that work with these things, know these things. So, like Bob said, getting that FaceTime with them ahead of time, finding out what's going on. If they're doing any kind of major renovations or work on these systems, being made aware of it. Um, I can say that the second anyone starts talking about HVAC systems, especially chiller systems, I automatically just I hate dealing with those, because
Right.
anytime we have something that's related to those, they're creating their own little environments. The temperatures are different in those areas. Chiller systems, you have cascading water places that's causing different humidity levels. It's causing draws of air. You have negative pressure that's occurring in spots, positive pressure occurring in other spots. So, where you think your product may be releasing, it may just be getting pulled across a room. You might open a door and find out that you're actually standing inside of a plenum box. So very intricate, knowing these systems ahead of time, having that maintenance personnel, the engineering personnel on scene that can explain to you how this works,
Hmm.
um, is a huge factor, because now you know, where do things go, where do they come from, and now I can try to figure things out, because where I'm getting my concentration of product could be completely removed from the source. And if I know the flow and how things move through there, that's going to be the big bonus on the front end, is having been there and being able to go, okay, yeah, we're getting concentrations here, but this comes from another spot. Let's go there.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And you know, there's different theories on when you should mask up, but as we always say, if you get this in your hand, you better have this in your face, because especially when you're going into an unknown, you know, your meter looks at so many things, right? So, um, but anyway, I digress. So
Yeah.
good
I don't think we have an
stuff.
aqua chem. We don't have an aqua chem sensor on the
No, no, no,
multi-gas
no.
meter.
We
So
don't.
until we can figure out what that product is and what its components are, stay on air.
Yeah, it's what? Free. That's right. Air's free. That's
Hmm.
right.
Hmm.
All right. Any last words, my friend?
No last words, but I'll give some
That's
parting
good.
words.
That's good. I'm glad you caught
Um,
that. I'm glad you caught on to that.
you know, just get with your crews, work with your operations level people, get out into your community, work with those. Obviously, everything could be a potential hazard. Identify those ones that are going to really be the challenges for you. Don't avoid them. Get ahead of it. Work with those people. Get some FaceTime. Get to know them. Um, Even if it seems like, oh, we just kind of go there and they give us a little tour. You've seen someone's face. You've learned a name. Now, when you go back there later on, there's some familiarity, a little bit easier communication.
And names and phone numbers change. You need to update that stuff as much as possible. Don't just go, "Oh yeah, I met Tom 5 years ago." Well, Tom may not be there anymore. So, I encourage you to check on those all the time. Uh, Before we head out, Hazmat HQ, our digital magazine, we started almost a year ago. We're coming up on our year anniversary, which is great. I think it's I don't know, 52 or more countries, which is great, fantastic. And we encourage anybody that wants to contribute to the magazine. You can go to the website hazmathq.com, download the magazine. On the first page, it gives you the email address. Submission to hazmathq.com. We want to hear from you. We want other people to submit articles. You don't have to be somebody that's on the circuit. Matter of fact, if you're not on the circuit, that's a good way to get on the circuit. But it doesn't matter, small department, large department, whatever. Everybody has something to share, and that's what's so great about our community. Um, and then lastly, some websites for you to check out. Hazmat 101 Consultants, our Facebook and YouTube channel, and of course our webpage, the Hazmat Guys Roundtable, live first Tuesday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then some Facebook pages for you, Hazmat Group, to Hazmat Group, and Common Sense. All great places for you to check out information. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Um, I'm sure, if you've got the question, somebody else has already asked the question. I guarantee it. So I encourage you to check that out. Derek, my friend, thank you very much as always.
Of course, of course. It's always fun getting on here and getting to talk about hazmat nerd stuff. So
For nerding out. All right. Yeah, it's a real quick side note. Derek and I were traveling in an airport one day and we hear this hazmat nerds in the middle of the airport. Remember that? Our,
Hmm.
our, our good buddy Nikki Reed, who is now a district chief, a little pump out to him. He's not going to hear it. He doesn't listen to this anyway. So anyway,
Oh, he'll listen now.
he will now. I might text him and tell him, hey, you might want to listen to this. Anyway, you guys have a great day. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.